Hello crafty friends, thanks for joining me as I make 5 more cards using the Spellbinders card kit of the month for May 2021. So the first card I'm using tape runner, and I'm going to adhere 3 pieces of very sort of busy pattern papers to the front of my card. Now the first layer is a fraction smaller than the card base, coming in from each side there. The second layer, you can see another busy pattern that I've taped down, and then the third layer on top of that one. Now my plan is to separate each of those layers by using some dark green peel-offs from Love from Lizzie. I'm going to use the widest peel-offs on the bottom layer there and do that to both sides, trimming off the excess and keeping those bits for later. I then take the medium size peel off and add that to the second layer of paper, and I'll do that again to the both sides there. And this one was giving me just a little bit of trouble, but they're easy enough to peel off in the first few minutes, so you can adjust them as you need. And then for the very top layer, I'm using the finest of the peel-offs to give it definition. And that just helps break up all the pattern papers from each other. So the topper and sentiment that I'm putting on the front of this card is quite a simple design but effective, and I wanted something fairly simple because of the busyness of the pattern paper already on the card. So I've taken the mermaid that I had altered previously in another video, and I've chopped her in half. I've slipped the sentiment card from the die cuts pack under her arms there, so she's holding it, and then the cut part of her tail, I've glued that to the bottom of the sentiment. I'm then going to raise her up with some foam tape and add some glue, then position her right in the center of that top panel there. I've then decided that I'd like to add some of the gems, just 2, one on either side of that bottom line of the sentiment. And that's card number 1 finished. For card number 2, now this one is a bit more involved. I've taken 4 strips of the pattern paper, and I've used some Lawn Fawn wavy edge dies. On the top one there, the top wave, I've used my Glitter Kiss because I found that it just didn't have enough definition against that blue mosaic paper that I'm using for the sky. I taped all my pieces together and then made sure that I could run it through my die cutting machine and have all the pieces being to size to fit into that stitched rectangle. Okay, so I've taken 2 mermaids, cut the one in the background off to make it look like there's a mermaid swimming off in the distance, and then cut the second mermaid, which I also added some dimension and sparkle to, and gluing that to this larger wave. Looks like she's got a head out of the water and splashing a tail. So I just line that up to make sure I covered those little pieces that I stuck in the back there. I'm now checking the position of all my other layers. That very front layer with the printed text, I'm making sure that I can pop up the die cuts that I wanted there underneath it, and that top layer, that text layer, is popped up on foam and all the rest are flat. And you can see I've gone ahead and created a scene using all the die cuts there and tried to create some perspective going back towards the large waves. I had some little glitter stars that I added in there as well. They're not in the ephemera pack. I had already used my gold stars in another project. And then I chose a sentiment, stuck it on a large circular, like a sequin, and then popped that up on foam tape. And I am done. And you can see that tail there. I've put some iridescent sequins on it and a little bit of metallic paint. For card number 3, this one I have chosen that beachy paper that has lots of the accessories you'd take to the beach. I've matted that onto that craft coloured cardstock that's in the kit. I'm then going to take a piece of green shimmer cardstock that comes from this Tonic Studios tropical pack, and I've embossed that with a stencil through my die cut machine, and that's just reinforcing that tropical feel and breaking up the busy pattern. I've taken a rose gold peel off from Lizzie, just as a separator between the embossed paper and the pattern paper there. I'm then taking my die cuts and arranging them in the position I want them to be in, and I've chosen a lot of the matching ephemera to the paper, and I play around with the position of where I want those, and when I'm happy I apply some glue and carefully place them onto the paper. That glue does give you quite a bit of wiggle room, so if you want to move something you can. This swimsuit here, in another video I showed how I used some silver peel-offs and decorated the swimsuit, as well as cutting out inside where the neck ties up there, just so you could see through instead of having the white pattern, a white paper there. I've now laid down the surfboard, and here's my little scooter that I use different watercolors on and glossy accents to make it look pretty. And I popped that up on some foam tape as well, and I'm just making sure that adhering down, giving the glue time to grab. Now I didn't show in the video, but I had made a tag and put a sentiment on the top to finish it off. So the next card, now this was the most time consuming card for me to make, as I had to work it out as I went along. So I wanted to make a card that had a clear window. I've taken a die that you can see there, and I've cut an opening through the front of the card as well as the piece of pattern paper. I've then taken a piece of acetate and used a stitched border just to help me to see where I needed to cut it out, because it is a very heavyweight acetate I'm using, not a thin one. I wanted the stability for the front of the card, so the heavyweight acetate was needed to do the job. So I've gluing that in, careful not to get the glue too close to the edges because I don't want the glue seeping out and making the acetate look cloudy. I'm then going to sandwich that acetate between the card and that pattern paper there. Just positioning it there, making sure I'm happy that all the edges are covered. Now I'm taking a whole plethora of the die cuts related to the seashells and coral, and I'm going to add them to the front of my card to frame up that clear panel in the front. So I'm using some flat die cut pieces, I've chosen some of the chipboard pieces on the foam, and I'm adding glue to those because I want to make sure that they'll stay for a long time. And in the postage, you don't want the pretty die cuts falling off on the person before they get to enjoy it. So here's some more shells. I'm just positioning and checking the spacing as I go to make sure that there's something in all the spaces. I don't want it overcrowded, but I don't want any dead space either. When I'm gluing the die cuts on that overlap the acetate, I'm trying not to get too much glue under the tips where they overlap the acetate. I just don't want any seepage there. Hopefully you can notice some of the seashells there. I've used my finger or the flower shaping tools to give it some shape, just to help them pop up off the page. It also makes it easier for later on if you want to tuck extra shells or coral pieces underneath to give more dimension. So I just about finished with my shells. I've decided that that large coral down in the bottom left corner looked a little light on with decorations. So I'm just coming in now with some of those pretty holographic chipboard pieces and my last few iridescent starfish. So I'm going to tuck them in, filling in those spaces where I felt it was a little empty. And then this is where I used up all my little gold starfish. So tucking that one in under that top shell that I had curved, and then placing some more around the page just to pull in that gold as well as the holographic on some of the printed images there. Now this is the piece that came out of the front of the card. I've got a white piece and a patterned piece. I cut myself a piece of plain white cardstock, folded it in half so that I could then glue that pattern paper over top. I have positioned that card inside of the main card and made sure that the front of the card didn't have any white gaps showing through. I wanted it to have a full picture when you look at the card from the outside. I used a hinge method to hold the card in place, and I used my T-square to make sure I had it straight. I then removed that washi tape that was holding it in place and went back to working on the front of the card. I'm adding in some of those dark coral gemstones in a variety of different sizes. It just livens up the card with a bit more of that coral tone and that gold reflected through it as well. For the inside of the card, where I've got my smaller card to write a message, I've added in a little shell decoration as well. So, my very last card. This one, I've taken the pretty hibiscus paper and I'm gluing that onto the front. Now it's about 1/8 of an inch smaller than the card. Once I have that nicely in position and no excess glue seeping out, I've taken a strip of gold cardstock because this paper has little gold foiling on the stamens of the flower. So I wanted to carry on with that tone rather than introduce a silver that was in the kit. Now this is a piece of printed cardstock from that same Tropical Paradise kit, and you'll see in the photos you can see the pattern a lot easier, and it has tropical leaves printed on it. I've raised that up with some foam tape, and now I'm going to go ahead and position matching hibiscus flowers under that half circle that I die cut out. Now I'm trying to make sure I've spaced them out so that I've got good coverage and they're overlapping. This flower here, I needed to trim off a little bit of the flower to get it to fit underneath the circular piece. Then pop that back in place, use my tweezers to push it down and get good contact with the paper underneath. Now my last little hibiscus flower slips in under there. Now I've used some fern leaves from the card kit of the month from, I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before, which included the little sloth die, and in that same die set for the card kit there were pandanus leaves and this fern leaf, and I'm using that to bring out some more of that green in the card, and then popping that in underneath the flowers to build dimension and give it some more life. I have taken a sentiment here from a Scrapbooking Made Simple die set, and it's going to say dream big. I did double up on cardstock here, but I chose to use some scrap cardstock rather than using my very best cardstock because it's not going to be seen, and it was nice and sturdy there too. Got my sentiment in place. I wipe up any extra glue there. Now I originally put these 3 gemstones on the circle, but later on decided I didn't like them there, and you'll see in the photos that I actually put them out around near the flowers instead. And here's the photo, you can see those gemstones there. So that's my 5 cards from this kit. I hope you've enjoyed and you've got some inspiration. And if you did enjoy the video, I would love it if you give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing as well. Until next time, keep crafting.